Hi there, everybody. Welcome to Know the Code Show. I think this is episode 7? So we've been doing this for 7 weeks now. Excellent. All right, today we are going to dig a little bit further into WordPress's Event Registry Management System. Now, we've been doing that over the course of, I don't know, the last 3-4 weeks. So before we were looking at apply underscore filters, then we moved to add underscore filter. Today we're going to reverse engineer remove underscore filter. But before we do that, we need to look at PHP arrays. As we know from the past episodes, the registry, event registry itself is a very large array, right? It's a multi-dimensional associative array. So what we want to do is figure out, how do you remove elements from an array? And the very first question that I asked you, and I gave you some sample code, asked you to load that up into your sandbox. And let's pull up that code. Might help. Okay, so here's the code. And right here on line 41, I asked you, will this particular line of code remove the last element of the array $demo underscore array? What did you guess? Come on. The answer is no. No, it won't. And let me tell you why. What kind of array is this right here? Demo underscore array. What type of array is that? The key when you look at it is, I just gave away the keys. See the keys right here? When you look at PHP's definition of arrays, you see that you have the ability to user define what the key is. Every array has a key to it. If you don't specify the key, then PHP is going to use an incremental whole number. In this case, we've specified all the keys, right? We've got foo, bar, baz, and foobar. So when down here on line 41, you can see it right here if I get my cursor off of it, we are trying to unset demo underscore array. The element that we're trying to unset is number 3. Okay, so let's count down. You would think that if this was an indexed array, that would be the 3rd element, right? Oh, that should work. 1, 2, 3. No, it doesn't. The way that PHP interprets this, 3 in this instance, because this array has keys, it says 3 is a key. And it type juggles it to what? A string. We learned that last week too. So look in this array. Do you see a key with the value, string value of 3? Nod your head no. No, we don't see that, do we? So therefore, it will not unset that last element. It won't pull it out of there. Okay, so the next question I asked you, q1.b, was how about line 44? Is that going to do it? Well, let's just walk through it before I just blurt out the answer. I know you already know it because I just gave you the answer from the last one. Count is looking at the array and it's counting the number of elements in that array. There are 4 elements. So therefore, when PHP executes this code, the first thing it's going to execute, it's going to jump into the middle and it's going to go, okay, order of precedence, I'm going to say with my order of operations, count is going to run first. So I'm going to count all of the elements and I'm going to get back a value of 4. So now put a 4 there in the brackets. So now we're trying to unset $demo underscore array brackets 4. And we're thinking, well, that should get the 4th element out of there, right? That should work. Again, look at the keys in the array. PHP interprets that. And it's looking to see, is there a string in there of a value of 4? And the answer is no. So no, that's not going to work. And if I ran that code, I would get the same. Let's go ahead and run it. So if I open this up, see there are 4 elements. This is the before, this is the after. And notice it's exactly the same. Nothing changed because that code was not true. Nothing happened. So it just skipped right on over it. All right, let's get rid of that one. So we're going to move on down. I'm going to try not to be so windy today. Oop, I didn't want to do that. All right, we're going to scroll down here. And the next thing was we had a code challenge. So in code challenge number 1, I asked you specify the 2 different approaches to remove that last element of the associative array. So our particular array is called demo_array, and we want to remove that very last element out of that array. And how would you do that? There's actually 2 different methods that you can use that PHP provides. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this. The very first one is with the unset, and we just went through that one. So let's do that one first. All right. So let me tell you what unset is. If you're not familiar, unset is something that some languages have, and here it is right here. So unset will basically unset a given value. But what does that mean? It's removing it from memory. That's it. It's basically, it's going, when you use it with an array, it's destroying that value. And then garbage collection is going to go and it's going to pull it out, but it's destroying the value. So therefore, when I run that, it's going to actually remove that element from the array. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at that. There's this. Let's make sure I have the code in there. Okay, good. So what I'm doing here is I know that my last element has a key of what? Foobar, right? It's the last element in that array. So if I know that key, I can then target it by putting it right here. And you can see my command is unset demo_array, and then I'm looking for the foobar key to be able to pull that out, right? So let's go ahead and run this code. And let's see what happens. This is the before. I have 4 elements, foo, bar, baz, foobar, right? This is the after. Notice there's only 3 elements, so it did pull it out of there, and that's what we wanted. Okay. The second method, go back to this. I'm going to uncomment this. So if you did a quick Google search and you said something like PHP remove last element of array, did you find array pop? I hope you did, because that's what it is. That's the function that you're looking for. So let's take a look at array pop. It pops an element off the end of the array. It does more than that. Keep reading. So let's come down to here. It actually does 2 different tasks. This one's a multitasker here. It removes the element off, the last element off the array, so it plucks it out of there, and it returns it. So it's a function that removes and returns. Unset does not return. This one returns. So if I need that element, if I need the value to be able to do something with it, I can assign it then to a variable, and now I'm able to go and do something with that last element from the array. All right, so let's take a look at what that does. I got to look at my code again. All right, good. I put it back in. And we're going to run this. All right, I'll explain this to you. I just wanted to get it running first. This is the before. I have 4 elements, foobar, baz, foobar. And then I have, if we go back to this, you can see I'm dumping it out to the screen so I can show you the value that's being kicked out of array pop. So look at the syntax. It's array_pop, parentheses, and then you put the variable for the array. You don't have to specify a key. Interesting. We're going to get to the when would you use one or the other in the next question. But just notice that in unset, I have to know the key. Array pop, I don't have to know the key. Okay. Then the last thing I'm doing is I'm just dumping it out and dying there so that I can see the difference. This is the before, this is the value coming out of array pop, and this is the after. So let's see what it looks like. Right here. Array pop actually gives me back the value of that last element. See, here's the value, some foobar value, and I have it right here. So now I can assign that into a variable and do something with it if I want to. I don't have to, but I have that option. And then I look at what is the state of demo underscore array after array pop has run. And you notice there's only 3 elements now. So it did 2 things. It pulls out that value, removes it from the array, so that entire element now is gone, and it returns it. Is that clear to you? I hope so. So question number 2, let's go ahead and move on to question number 2. I asked you, what's the difference between the 2 approaches? And I think you already know because I kind of spit it out here. Let's go ahead and unset that so we can look at this code. Method number 1, very simple. If you know the key and you don't need the value back, you don't want to do something with the value, unset works fantastic. It's fast, it's easy, off you go. Array pop, on the other hand, you either don't know the key, which happens in a lot of cases, and normally what I'm using array pop for is I'm actually taking an array that has a bunch of values in it, and I'm pulling them off one at a time. I'm going, oh, give me that one, and I'm going to do some stuff. Give me that one. I'm going to do some stuff. You can do it in a different way in that you would iterate over that particular array. And what I mean by iterate is you've put it into a loop, which would be a for each loop, right? But I want the last one first. So first I'd have to sort it, and then I'd have to run it through a loop so that it, I'm flipping the values around. So now instead of foo being up here, I'd have foo bar, then I'd have baz, then I'd have bar, then I'd have foo. So I'm flipping the order. If I wanted to do it that way, then I can pull them off and iterate through with a key and a value. But array pop has its purposes. And you'll see that as you get into more and more code that, okay, that's a handy little tool. And I want to be able to assign that to something so that I can use it, whatever that may be. So does that make sense to you? All right. Since I can't see your heads nodding up and down going, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, move on. All right, explanation for number 3. Question number 3. We're going to dive deep into WordPress now. And the very first thing I tell you, anytime you go into WordPress, there's always going to be a great big old yellow box that tells you for testing purpose only, what do you do? Always, always, always. I'm not being dry here. I'm being very wet. Always, always, always wrap your code in some comments at the start and at the end, and make sure you're very verbose so that you can find it. Because you know darn well you're going to put it in there, and then the phone's going to ring, or the wife's going to call, or the husband's going to call, or you're going to get up and go do something. You're going to come back, you're going to forget. And then you're going to be like, crud, this isn't working. What happened? At least you can do a search and find all the places where you've put temporary code in. And it's perfectly fine when you're testing and when you're trying to figure out. We're reverse engineering to help you learn the code. If you're not sure how something works, this is a great way to figure out how it works. Put some temporary code in there. You're able to discover what's happening. Okay. I think I beat that up every week, don't I? So I put some temporary code in. It's right here. Here's the, there it is. There's the start. There's the end. I put some extra text there so that when it dumps out to the screen, you can see what the heck I'm doing. So I didn't give you that in your examples. Here's the original code, the unset. We're going to get to that in a moment. So we're going to look at the before and dump it out. Then it's going to run through the unset like we did in our example last time. And then we're going to look at the after. So this is remove underscore filter. This is in core, guys. Excuse me while I take a drink of my lemon water. And I wince a little bit. Shoulders in spasm today, so excuse me if I'm a little jumpy. All right, so let's look at our code in the plugin. And we're going to walk through this step by step. I want to make sure that you get this. I need to comment this out. I'm going to come down here. Here is the code that I gave you for question number 3. And you notice there's a couple of different things going on. I know it looks hokey, but for our demonstration purposes, it suits the bill here. So what's going to happen when we run this code? Let's walk through it. The first thing that's going to happen is PHP is going to come down, and remember, it goes line by line in order, top to bottom. So the first thing it does is it lands on add underscore filter for the event name of the title. This is our callback that we want to have registered for this particular callback. And for this one, we set a priority of 9, and I want 2 args. And here is my callback, and I have 2 args. See, 1, 2. And in here, just in case it calls it, I give us a whoops and let us know that, oh, darn, it didn't unregister it. Kind of like a fail-safe to let me know, okay, silly, you did something wrong. Okay, so then now PHP is not going to be in here yet because this filter is not fired. So we're going to come down, we're going to register, we're going to see, yep, here's that function. It's going to store that away. Okay, there's that function. This code in here is not going to run yet. It's going to come down to this add underscore action. And now for this event, which is loop, loop underscore start, we're going to register our demonstration callback. Now, when the loop starts, the very first thing that happens is this filter right here, or this event right here fires. So loop underscore start is the first thing that's going to happen. Before the title gets called, very first thing, hey, my loop is starting. Do you want to do something? That's what that's for. So yes, in our case, the very first thing we're going to do is it's going to fire our callback demonstration and look at the line in there, remove underscore filter, and we're going to unregister. So we registered it up here. When the loop starts, we unregister it. And we're doing this on purpose, obviously, because we want to see the remove underscore filter, how that works. So when this runs, here is our callback. We're going to come into here. It's going to call this up, and it's going to say, okay, give me the tag, give me the function to remove, give me the priority. Ignore this here. You don't care about that because what we're doing are strings. We don't need to worry about when there's an array coming through. But the function to remove stays the same. We're going to get to this little R in a minute, but basically it's checking to see, well, let me back up a second. This globals and the W underscore filter, that is the global registry, the event registry for WordPress. So it's looking in there and it's going to say, okay, for that key tag by that priority, is this function in that priority? So they have to match, right? You can't have that function be a 10 because we set ours as a 9. It'll say, nope, it's not. And it's going to skip over this and go right down to the end and say, just return. All right. So if it is in there, if it is registered, then we'll come down. We're going to jump into this conditional. And we're going to say, and I had to do this because there's other events running, obviously. So I had to be able to qualify it and say, all right, if this one's ours, and you can see by function to remove, and if it is ours, then we're going to jump in and we'll dump out to see, okay, what does the event registry look like before we unset it? Okay. The next thing that happens is we unset. And look what happens. We're removing our function name from this priority. Remember, we did that in the other exercises. So as soon as I run unset, I know all the keys. So it's going to now remove the function, that callback, from the array. That element's going to get removed. All right. So then we're going to skip down to our code again, and we're just going to dump it out on the screen so we can see what does that look like. So let's run it. All right. Like I said, I put a little bit of text in here so we could see what's happening. So this is before it unregisters our callback. And you can see right here, I've got 1, and this is for priority 9. You're going to say, well, why is priority 9? Well, let's go and look. Right here, 9. See it? And here, these two have to match, by the way. If I put a 9 there and I don't put anything there, it's not going to work. So this has to match. Because, like I said, right here, it's looking for that priority, and then it's looking for that function in that priority. All right. So if we look at the code, or we look at what gets rendered out onto the screen, you can see it right here. Here is the function name. And if I scroll over, that's our function, right? No, the code show, episode 7, demonstrating underscore, and the rest of it. We want 2 args. That's before. Now here's what happens after. Notice it says there's nothing in that array. There's only 1 in there before, and then after the unset occurs, there's now none. It removed it, right? All right. So I kind of went out of order there, but in question 3A, I asked you, would our callback demonstrating underscore unregistering underscore callback from event registry fire? And the answer is, drumroll, no. No, it would not, because loop start fires our callback and we unregister it. And you just saw it right here. It unregisters before the title. Here's the title down here, right? Before that event gets fired. Good. Now, for Q3B, I asked you, what is the unset doing? And I think we just talked about that, but I want to show you a graphic too that might help a little bit if you're having a little trouble with it. Okay, so remove underscore filter. This would be where we're putting in event name would be the underscore title, our callback from our plugin, and we have a priority of 9. This wires down to the function in core. This is the tag, right? The event name. This is the function that I want to remove. I want to unregister it. This is the priority. Excuse me. If you come down to the globals, you can see how that wires up. I don't know if you can see that as well. So down here at the bottom, you can see there's the tag, there's the priority key, and there's the callback that we want to unregister. And that's how that works. Everything wires right up like that. Yeah, those diagrams, I think, help you guys out the most. Let's go ahead and skip on down and talk about 3C. And I asked you, what's the value that you see dumped out on the screen when you run the temporary code? And I already showed you, it's nothing. Nothing gets dumped out because right here, it's emptied out that array. Good. I think you guys got that. And if not, ask me and we'll talk about it. So let's get into some smelly code. It's time to, and every episode I'm going to do this. If I see smelly code, we're going to talk about it. Okay. That way I can start tuning up your sniffers. I want you guys to have good super sniffers. When you look at this code right off the bat, and for those who don't know what smelly code is, come on, how could you not know? Haven't you watched my presentation yet? Right here, here's my presentation. You can find it on the hub. And it's sniffing out the smelly code. And it's a nice long presentation there for you. And it'll walk you through what code quality is and some of the things that you want to look for. And this is one of them in that list. So I'm going to pull that right up. And we're going to talk about purposeful naming conventions. Do you see it right here? This R. If you're looking at this code, and you probably did this when you looked at it and you went, okay, it's assigning this to an R, and then it's checking to see if it's equal to true, and then it's returning it. Okay. What does that R do? What's it represent? You don't know, do you? It's just an R. So now you've got to go and you've got to look at the code and figure out what it's actually representing. So what purposeful naming convention says is, for functions, classes, and methods, you name it by its functionality, what it does, so that we all have a clue. It does this. Be verbose. Don't be shy. It's just a little bit of typing. For variables, you want to name them by what value they represent. So whatever data that it's holding, because that's what variables do, right? They're holding some value in memory. What data does that represent? So if I needed number of widgets, for example, that's kind of stupid, but I would say number underscore of underscore widgets. That would be my variable. I wouldn't just say num or in or I. If I'm looping through with a for loop, I see that all the time. Be $I, $X. Don't do that. Give us clues what you're trying to pluck out in the iteration that you're doing. So that is purposeful naming. And that's the Smelly for today. I hope you found it. If you didn't, just remind me. I'll have to get on you. All right. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to continue on down and looking at the rest of this. But that took a little bit more going back into PHP and looking at arrays again, and we ran out of time. So we'll do that next week. All right. Let's get to your questions if you have any. All right, Jeff. Hi, Jeff. I thought 0 was assigned to the first element of an array. You are correct. If it's an indexed array, indexed, not associative. Let me go back. And I want to comment this out. We're going to go back up to the top just for clarification to make sure you guys get this. And I want to put that back in. This is an associative array, Jeff. The keys, you're specifying what the key is. So therefore, 0 doesn't mean anything in here. There's nothing in here that has a 0 key. Every array that PHP builds has a key. So if I had this as indexed example, and I went array, okay. First element in this array, you notice there's no key, right? There's no key in that one. So that is 0. The next one is 1. That one has a key of 2. Every one of these has a key associated with it. I could even say, as I did last week, well, if I could type, that is, that this one is 0 if I wanted to go that far. I don't know why I would, but if I wanted to do that, because I like typing, goodness gracious, I don't do enough of it all day. I want to type that out. Then yes, that is equivalent to index 0 for that key. This is what the keys look like. It will be 0, that would be 1, here's foo, and so on down the pike. Now, for an associative array, you use that key instead. So you would use foo or bar or baz, right? Or if you're looking at, I'm trying to think of an example and seeing when I need one, I can't pull it out of thin air. Let's say you had an array of columns and there's some data in there that you want. You might be able to say, for column 1, I want this, and so on. So you'd pull it out by key. I hope that makes sense. If not, Jeff, let me know and we can talk about it a little bit more. All right, Patrick. You came across end and key functions to target the final value and then get the key. Now, end, yes, key, you can get a key out of there. You're correct. End is going to be, let's go ahead and look at that. Sets the internal pointer of the array to the last element. That's what it does. That's all it's doing, Patrick, is it's just setting that internal pointer. So every pointer on there, or if you think about how memory works, remember we talked about this last week and I showed you the memory stack and I said that there's a pointer and we were talking about maps. If you're thinking of a Google map and you're looking at the building, an apartment building that we were looking at, and you think about a physical pointer, if you want to visualize it in your mind, anytime that you iterate through an array, anytime that you iterate through the memory stack, I know that's a little advanced. You're going to get into that when we start talking about computer science a lot more. Anytime that we're iterating through those, your program needs a way to be able to point and say, this is where I'm at. I'm right here. So picture a little pointer. Take your finger and point it out at the screen. Picture a little pointer. And you say, okay, I'm right here. So if I have a for each in my loop and I'm looping through an array, that's how it keeps track of it. It says, okay, I'm at the first element, then I'm at the second element, then I'm at the third element. And if I put an end in there, it's going to jump right down to the end. But now I've got to do something with that, right? So yes, it does return the value of the last element or false. You can use that. You've now set the pointer to the very end, which does something a little bit different. So if you were using that pointer to do something else elsewhere, you've just messed up the pointer. So that's why I didn't talk about end. There is a value to using that, and you can actually see current. Oh, shoot. Where's that at? Hold on one second. Bear with me, guys. You know, when you're looking for something, you think it just pop up at you? No, hold on. There it is. Right here. See current, Patrick? So that is setting a pointer, and it's looking at where the current pointer is pointing at right now. So those are very, very handy for manipulating where you want to jump to within the array itself. But just be cautious with them unless you know what you're doing. Okay? I hope that answers your question too. All right, gang. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to have fun next week too. And then after that, I don't know what I'm going to get into, but we'll figure it out. Something fun. Maybe we'll move on to, oh no, we've got a lot of other things to cover, I think, in the event registry system. So we'll talk about more of those, maybe some knowing when an event is actually firing, those types of things. Okay, we'll talk to you all on Slack, and you guys have a good rest of your day. See ya.